How to access the Emergency Response Data Platform. Any public safety agency can access life-saving emergency data through the RapidSOS Emergency Response Data Platform. There are two ways of doing so. RapidSOS Portal is a powerful web-based tool that enables you to manage emergencies and access location and supplemental data for every call in your jurisdiction. Signing up for RapidSOS Portal is easy and only takes a few minutes. In addition to emergency management tools and data, RapidSOS Portal includes a training platform as well as administrative tools to manage user permissions, track usage, and analyze trends in your agency. To learn more and sign up for RapidSOS Portal, please visit rapidsosportal.com. RapidSOS also integrates with every major CAD, CPE, mapping, or other public safety softwares. With an integration, you can receive RapidSOS data through your existing workflow, and you won't need any additional screens, tabs, or windows. To learn more about integrations, visit rapidsos.com/public-safety-partners.
All right. Well, I'm sure some of you noticed an email went out yesterday, I think. I had limited access to my other computer, and I thought I was going to have to re-record the radio section. I did not have to re-record it. Yay. I was able to get it off of my previous laptop onto my new one and was able to update everything. So even though last week's live was week 5, the radio section became week 6, and we are now at week 7. And just as a quick reminder, the session, I think I canceled it on the calendar. I may not have, but May 17th, I will be teaching. So we will not have a session on May 17th. So I will get that off of the calendar if I had not, and just know you will have access to all of the materials by the end. The other thing I just wanted to let you know is one of the things that I had started to do in the beginning was put some questions at the end of the PDF. I got a little sidetracked from doing that. I am going to try to go back and add some of those. The amount of seconds and minutes in my day is challenging at best most days. So I will be adding the ones that are not on there in the foreseeable near future. So I am home a little bit longer, so I should be able to catch up on that pretty soon. So with that, we will officially get started. So welcome to the 2024 Summer Fall E&P Study Group through OnScene First. This is week 7, wireless. I just have a couple of housekeeping things that I need to go over. If you are stumbling across this video on YouTube, just know that this is a live session that will go until June 21st. If you are finding this video before June 21st, 2024, and you would like to be added to the live study group, where you will receive access to the Google group that contains the recorded videos, the PDFs, MP3s, any practice exams or additional information that I provide, as well as a calendar invite for the remaining sessions of this particular live session. If you are stumbling upon this after the June 21st end date for this live session, you can request access to the previous study group's information, the one that's currently live right now, where you will be added to the Google group or whichever way I decide to do it in the future. But all E&P study information is located at onscenefirst.com/training/study ENP. And then to be notified when and big if the next live study group will take place, do me a favor and go on to the OnScene First website at onscenefirst.com and register to receive updated newsletters from We don't send out a lot of them, but whenever there's anything major going on, I do send them out. And I threw that little word in there. If is I may as I've been speaking, I was going to, over the last few sessions, I had mentioned that I was going to be moving from 2 study groups per year down to one, and it may actually be taking a hiatus to not having an actual live study group for a little bit. There are lots of things in the works, and I will I will post more about that later, but just want to let folks know that are stumbling upon this that accessing a previous archive study group might be the way to go. So, with that, no matter what, I will have resources for you. I will have training materials for you. Eventually, I will probably pick it back up, but it's just one of those things you have to make a decision once in a while. And this is one of those times. So, unfortunately, that has to be the case. Our premier study group sponsor is Rapid SOS. Just want to give them a quick shout out and a thank you. I truly appreciate all they have done for me since I left there at the end of 2020. But they still continue to support, and this study group has been one of the things that they have continued to support. So I thank them. And without them, this definitely could not have been made possible. We do have our scholarship deadline has passed. It was April 26th, so it was last Friday. It looks like I have about 25 submissions to start peeling back the layers of. I will be emailing the directors or the persons that were listed as the um, person that would make the decisions at your agency as to whether or not the exam fee is covered, probably today or tomorrow. But the scholarships will be given out on May 10th. And those would not be possible if it wasn't for our sponsors, Rapid SOS, Responder Services Consulting, and LB Com. So they have been extremely generous. We have been able to give away, we're giving away 5 scholarships for the summer exam period. So there you go. This week, we're going to talk about the wireless stuff. We will talk about some of the terms a little bit later when we talk about the actual next gen 911 process. But this is just kind of that generic overview of the things that you need to know about wireless 911 and how they move through the system, etc. And there's a few Tracyisms in here that hopefully will help you when those questions appear, because I know they will, and I know that they have been helpful to others. So here we go. So in your body of knowledge, there is one of the items is methods for 911 call routing. Not knowing exactly what is meant by that, I just added these couple of slides that just kind of break down. We've talked about basic 911 already. We've talked about enhanced 911. So I'm not going to go through these again specifically because this is, wireless for sure. But it is my understanding, and I could be totally off base or wrong, but it is my understanding that when they are referring to in the body of knowledge methods for call routing, these are the things that they're looking for. So whether it's basic 911, enhanced 911, wireless E911, VoIP 911, and then our next generation 911. And so we'll have a whole section on the next generation 911 stuff, and that will have a lot of new terms, etc. It's funny because I just think to myself, we've been talking about next generation 911 for over 20 years now, and there are still a lot of components and pieces that our frontline folks just don't know, or they have no idea what role they play in the advancements of next generation 911. So I tried to create some diagrams, some ways of remembering things as far as it goes for the next gen 911 stuff. So hopefully that'll be helpful for you when we get there. So when we talk specifically about wireless, we have to talk about the actual wireless devices. So when we moved away, how many of you, did anyone in the chat let me know? Did anyone have one of these bag phones? My dad did. I, however, did not. Jason, your mom did. Okay. Derek, you had one. Can you imagine? Can you imagine having to walk around with that today? All the different chargers and all of that stuff. It's crazy, right? Um, and then your landscaping boss did, right? Like super, super important to get calls out in the field, right? Jason, dad had a car phone, which was just a spread out bag phone. Yeah, absolutely. And I'm sure if I looked hard enough, there's one of these in my basement somewhere. I would bet that there is, or one at my parents' house. Bills by the minute, right? Can you imagine? Can you imagine? Like, I just look at the kids today and they have no idea. Remember, like, one, you had to stretch the phone cord and go into another room or sit in the closet and close the door. And now you can just be anywhere talking. But wireless devices, specifically a device with the ability to transmit voice or data without the need for a physical connection to any type of source, right? We're going to be specifically talking about wireless devices, as in cell phones that are going to be calling 911. I know with the advancements of this exam, there's going to have to be sections added on any type of the Skype and Teams and Zoom, etc. type calling of 911. But right now we're not there. So we talk about network routing specifically when it comes to wireless. Calls from cellular phones are received via the cell tower by what is called a mobile switching center. Okay, I'm going to break those down in just a little bit. The switching center automatically assigns a unique identifier to the cellular 911 call, also known as a pseudo ANI. And we're going to talk about this. We did give the definition of pseudo ANI earlier on. If you remember, I had like a wired line phone with a band-aid over it. Because that's kind of what happened as we migrated to wireless devices. And when more folks other than drug dealers and doctors started to get these mobile devices, they realized that folks were using these phones to call 911 and they weren't doing kind of what they were supposed to be doing. So there was a quick fix that had to take place. And unfortunately, that quick fix has stayed in place for a really, really, really long time. And then with the wireless, doctors can be drugged. Yeah, I mean, touche, right? A lot of them are, as we see these days, right? But the selective router connects the call to the PSAP based on the cell tower's location. And now we're specifically talking about the evolution of wireless 911 calling. I know that there are going to be places where some of these technology pieces are going to be done away with, like the selective routers, et cetera, when we get to next generation 911. But they are a part of the wireless network now and the foundation of the growing of the wireless devices calling 911. So just kind of keep that in mind. I know sometimes folks they'll take one of these classes, they'll look for clarification or say in the comments, but we're not going to need the selective router. Yeah, great, 100%. However, right now it has to be a part of this conversation. So I wonder how many of you knew there was actually a phase 0. We know there's phase 1, we know there's phase 2. Evidently, there is kind of a phase 3 now, but it's not officially named a phase 3. And that's the same thing with phase 0. There was no such thing as phase 0. It just kind of became phase 0 when phase 1 actually existed. So phase 0 was basically before we realized the magnitude of these wireless devices calling and how things had to be different, etc. It was basic wireless, which was equivalent to basic 911, that never really existed. No one really refers to phase 0 of wireless 911 calling. Wireless 911 back then was kind of just like a speed dial button. It would just transfer you to the local 911 center. It was like a hot button per se, and nothing came with it. It was ironically on that wall right there is the red phone. Um, that was considered what our 911 was. That was the 10-digit line, but some folks would have um that just direct line into their 911 center where these calls would be directed to. With phase 0, the mobile switching center, the MSC, and you're going to see these terms again. Remember, I told you to know your acronyms. We just had a testing period, the April testing period. I got lots of positive responses. Lots of folks passed. That makes my heart happy. And I will get emails from them. And they would tell me, that they got the preliminary pass. I would always ask, which I ask of folks, is to say, hey, are you was there anything that I needed to go over, et cetera, et cetera? And so many folks will always mention the use of the acronyms. So Jason, what if your 911 wasn't preset as a speed dial? What would you reach then? It was based it wasn't actually when I say it was like a speed dial, it was imagine if there was a speed dial behind your number set, right? So it wasn't taking specific information. It wasn't going through the network trying to find the MSAG and the selective router database and all those things. It was just kind of like you would dial 911 and it just knew that those three numbers, when they get dialed together, they go to this location. So no matter what, from that phone, it was almost like preset that the 911 call was going to go to the closest 911 center based on what was happening behind the scenes. Call forwarded to a 10-digit line at the center. Yeah. Yep, exactly. So whatever that like 24/7 number was, because it wasn't going to come in on the business line. It was kind of this, again, a makeshift Band-Aid behind the scenes. So folks could dial 911. And we didn't see a lot of this. Just so you know, we didn't see a lot of this because phase 1 was kind of where we started to move forward. And I wouldn't get too hung up on that. It's just kind of a generalized statement, more focused on the what was necessary in phase 1 and phase 2. And that this mobile switching center kind of translated that 911 into a 7 or 10-digit number to get to that 911 center. So at our agency, that red phone right there, the phone number that was associated with that was 508-763-2424. But then all of a sudden there were all of these ads and things where folks were starting to learn the 911 was the national emergency number. So they had to dial, if they dialed 911, it almost, like the way you said, it had to forward it to an actual 10-digit number. So the 10 digits, 508-763-2424, and our 911 line lived on the same thing. The caller could dial 911, but behind the scenes, it would turn it into kind of like a speed dial, if that makes sense. And again, it was only called phase 0 after phase 1 arrived. It was never intended to be phase 0. Just like looking ahead, when we get towards the end of the session today, and I talk about some of the new stuff that's happening, it really should be, we should be moving towards a phase 3, like a wireless phase 3 call. But it is definitely being called other things. So there we go. All right, let's jump into wireless phase 1 specifically. So this is the delivery of a wireless 911 call with the callback number and identification of the cell tower from which it was originated. That's pretty much all you're getting. And even when wireless phase one first started coming out, not everybody got the tower information. Like I said, when we first started getting our 911 calls, they were on one of those red phones right there. We didn't get any Annie Alley, nothing. It was just coming in on that call. And I don't even know if we were answering. I mean, I wasn't there then. But I did have some conversations with the first dispatcher for our area. And um she had talked about how they didn't know whether or not somebody had dialed 911 or if they had dialed the 10-digit line. Um, and then they didn't get anything with it. It was just a person on the other side. Um, the cell sector is what determines the call routing, where that call is going to go. Now, again, we've moved towards wireless phase one. So the cell tower and the cell sector is going to determine where that call is going to go. And it was that way for a really long time. The wireless service providers were required to send wireless phase one to any requesting PSAPs by April 1st, 1998. So you didn't have to accept wireless phase one 911 calls. You could have just kept things as is, just like as we move towards phase two calls and then other types of calls. But anybody that at the time had requested that they wanted to receive the wireless phase one calls with the information that was being provided, the service provider had to do so before April Fool's Day, 1998. So a little bit more about phase one specifically. So the FCC mandate required at the time PANI, that pseudo Annie phone number. I call it kind of a fake phone number, and I'm gonna touch on that in just a little bit. And the callback number needed to be delivered to the PSAP. And we're gonna get into a little bit about these 7 to 8 digit capabilities, 20-digit capabilities. I'm going to break down a little bit more because I do know that there's a question on the exam that is specific to the number of digits and to what mechanism or method, call path method it is taking. And I'm going to give you a Tracyism to remember that. But when we talked about the CAMA trunks, remember CAMA trunks were in place for specifically toll calling, right? So like that's who your long distance service provider was. It would identify the call setup, how long you were on the call for, how far away you called, how much it was going to cost, etc. But the camera trunks would only allow 7 or 8 digits to maneuver through that system. So that presented a problem because as we started incorporating the ALI database, that's when we get into the call has to be routed to the PSAP. And then once it gets to the PSAP, it has to be parsed out, wrapped up in the data question, and sent out to that ALI database and requests the location information. But our later standards allowed for up to 20 digits to be delivered. So I know that I probably got that question wrong about the 20 digits because in my simple brain, I had thought that wireless phase one was 7 to 8 digits, but then we just got better and was able to accept 20 digits at wireless phase two. That is not the case. And I don't want to confuse anyone, but I want to throw this out there because if your brain works like my brain works, I would have just assumed if over here we're only able to get 7 or 8 digits and then we get to another phase, that is the way the question would make sense, is that it would be wireless phase two that allowed us up to 20 digits. And it wasn't, it was still phase one. So while the beginning phases of phase one, the camera trunks would only allow 7 to 8 digits. So that meant it was the phone number, and then maybe like that when you have to dial a one, etc. Um, and then that phone number would be um, parsed out, sent to the database. The information would then come back. And then 20 digits for numbers overseas. No, these are actually, this is going to be different. The 20 numbers that it's referring to is actually the P Annie and the phone number. So I'll get into that. So we don't have to worry about any of the overseas stuff as it pertains here. So it's just what numbers are going to be able to move through this system in what ways. But they're both, when you see the question about moving from 7 to 8 digits to up to 10 to 20 digits, it is still a part of phase one. And like I said, to me, I was rationalizing like, oh, well, phase two just got so much better. So I'm assuming that's when we were able to get more digits. That's not the case. It is still part of phase one. So hopefully that helps. And I'm going to give you another way to remember it also. So these were some of the terms that were introduced in phase one. This pseudo Annie, it's a fake number. It's kind of incognito, if you will. And it's an assigned telephone number that is used to support the routing of a 911 call. And why was that? Again, because it wasn't a wire line call, and I could have an area code over here and an area code over here, and I'll go back to 988 for a second, and we're going to talk about 988 later. But the way that 988 is set up right now is that if I picked up my phone and I dialed 988 based on my area code 774, it is going to route that call to here in Massachusetts, because 774 is one of the Massachusetts area codes. Okay. But 911 can't be that way. And so when you have these cell phones where I have a 774 number, imagine, if you will, I'm in California and I pick up my phone to dial 911. If it worked like 988 does right now, even if I'm in California with 988 and I dial, it's still coming back to Massachusetts based on the area code. So without this fake phone number, without the pseudo Annie that is based on the tower location that it hits, the call would go where it wasn't supposed to. So the pseudo Annie is going to get picked up along the line, and it's going to say, hey, this call belongs in this area because it hit this tower. If it just sent the phone number, if it sent it based on the phone number and the area code, it would not have got to where it needed to go. So the pseudo Annie is a fake phone number that gets attached after the call is placed, after it hits the tower, goes to the mobile switching center, picks up that fake phone number, and then it goes through the rest of the process. And I'll show you a diagram on that in just a second. The ESRK is another term that came up with phase one. And I'll tell you, I had never heard of this, even though ESRK has been around since phase one has come. It's interchangeable with the pseudo Annie. It's basically that phone number, kind of the pseudo Annie phone number that opens the door for that 911 call to be routed to the center that it belongs to. So by definition, it uniquely identifies a wireless emergency call. They are not tower or sector specific. They are used to route the call through the network and retrieve the associated alley. Where it becomes specific is in the next definition. And I played back and forth, like, which order am I going to put them in? But they both have added value. So once I give the definitions, I'll kind of explain how it happens. You then have emergency service routing digits. These use, and we're going to get into the call path associated signaling in just a few minutes. There's hybrid CAS, and then there's just regular CAS, and then there's non-CAS. We'll talk about those. But the emergency service routing digits are specific to the cell tower and sector. Each call from a given cell sector uses the same ESRD. So if we were to go back and follow through the network, if you had the ESRD, then you would know what tower and what sector that call came from. So you would know which one it hit using the ESRD. The ESRK, the emergency service routing key, and the PANI are interchangeable. They are similar. It's basically a fake phone number or a key, if you will, that will allow that phone call, that phone number, that device to open the door into the network that's going to that specific PSAP. So PANI, fake phone number that gets picked up very early on. The emergency service routing key, it is interchangeable with PANI. And I'll tell you, I was working on a lawsuit case that I was working on this case, and one of the attorneys had sent a request to the phone company, and that request to the phone company basically said, we would like any and all information associated with this phone number between this date and this date and this time and this time. And while you would think that that would just be easy, because it was related to a 911 call specifically, they needed to come back with the ESRK. The phone company actually sent back a letter saying, we are not able to locate the information that you're requesting based on the phone number alone. We need to have the ESRK. And so the attorney reached out to me, and ironically, before ENP, I wouldn't have had any idea what they were talking about. After ENP, I now know that the pseudo ANI and the ESRK are basically the same exact thing. So I sounded really smart when I said, oh, that's the same thing as the PANI. Let me see what your alley screen looks like, and I'll show you exactly where that number is. And I'll show you an example on just one of the screens, that a screen capture that I got in just a second. So hopefully this makes sense. PANI, fake phone number. ESRK, it's the fake phone number, but it's kind of the key that opens up the network to allow that call to go to where it goes. It is specific to the phone, not the sector, not the cell sector. And the emergency service routing digits is specific to the cell tower and the particular sector. Okay, so there we go. And then this is just an example of a call screen. And when you look at this phone number over here, here's your area code 511-2203. This 511 in here, that's going to be indicative of that fake kind of phone number. And that is your PANI. That's the number. So using that PANI is going to allow us to trace that call back through the system. All right, our PANI and ES always the same. Yeah, I don't know of any other place where they would be different. It is my understanding, Tanya, that they are the same. They are one and the same. And in this case, when the attorney had asked what they were talking about, and I said, send me the alley information, not the ANI information, because the ANI is just the phone number. send me the alley information, and I was able to find the what we interchangeably call the peony. I was able to find that number for him and say, "Oh, this is the number that they're looking for." And he sent it back, and we all looked really smart. So, yes, they are interchangeable. You're welcome. All right. So, looks like I forgot to put my little animation on here, but I'll explain what all this means in a minute. So when it comes to our wireless call network, remember, we are still on phase 1. We're still on phase 1. We haven't moved phase 2 yet. So we're on phase 1. Call path signaling methods. These are on your exam. What do the questions look like? I don't totally remember, but I do know you want to make sure that you know the difference between these, and I'm going to make it as simple as possible. Even though there's going to be a lot of definitions, I'm going to try to make it as simple as possible. It refers to the method of signaling used in telecommunications where signaling information such as call setup, tear down, control messages is transmitted within the same path or channel used for the call itself. Now, I know that doesn't mean a whole heck of a lot, but you have to keep in mind when you're sending any type of voice or data, depending on how that call is being sent, they may be going down the same path or they may actually have to take an alternate path. The voice can go one place, the data can go another way, etc. And we're going to go into some Tracyisms. There are 2 that we are specifically going to focus on. We're going to focus first on the call path associated signaling and the non-call path associated signaling. And these 2 modes of transportation are going to be very relevant as you move through kind of understanding what each one of them is. Again, we are still on wireless phase 1. So remember when I told you about the 7-8 digits versus the 20 digits? The 20 digits. So when we look at, there's going to be some Tracyisms here. So I'm going to try to break it down out of my brain as simple as I possibly could. Call path associated signaling. Anytime we say those words, I want you to associate the call path versus the non-call path with the school bus. And just know that anytime we're talking about that call path associated signaling, 20 digits can get on that school bus. There's lots of seats on the school bus. 20 digits. We can have 20 digits on that school bus. When we're talking about the non-call path associated signaling, NCAS, we're talking about the sports car, okay? Smaller vehicle, smaller amount of numbers that can fit in that vehicle. We're also going to talk about timing of the bus and the sports car. Which one's older? Okay. We're going to talk about where they can go. And we're going to make it relevant to the school bus and to the sports car. So buckle up. Here we go. Call path associated signaling and non-call path. Transmission method. On the call path side, we got a school bus. The school bus takes the same path all the time, correct? Correct. So that's part of your definition. So if the definition says which one, and it says signaling information is transmitted within the same path or channel used as the call itself, the same feature is going to be the school bus. The school bus takes the same route every day, right? The non-call path, the little sports car gets behind the school bus, is like, I need to get there much quicker. I know a detour. So I'm gonna bang a right over here, and then I'm gonna take this way, and I'm gonna go this way, and I'm gonna go this way. But it's gonna bring all the stuff with it, right? So the non-call path isn't the same. Signaling messages are transmitted separately from the voice or data path used for the call itself. So it's not taking the same route as it originally would. Does that make sense? Call path, school bus. Same route. Non-call path, sports car. Taking a shortcut. All right, maybe it's about the same way, but either way, it's not going at the same way. That sports car is going to go whatever route it can go to get there the fastest. Or maybe they want to take a Sunset Drive, or maybe they just want to go wherever it is they want. They're not going to take the same route. Okay. Typical usage breakdown. Historically, meaning older, used in traditional analog, older. Buses have been around a lot longer than little meep sports cars. So when you start to look at these words, historically, traditional, analog, in the past, buses were around long before the sports cars were. Historically used in traditional analog telephone systems, such as older versions of the public switch telephone network, where signaling information like dial pulses, older, buses were around longer, or DTMF tones are sent along with the voice signal over the same physical connection. Remember, we all get on the bus, we're going the same way. Typical uses for the non-call path, commonly used in modern digital telecommunication systems where signaling and call data, I just added an R there, are carried over different channels. Examples include, and again, we mentioned this last week, we're going to talk specifically about these in another area, but examples include the ISDN, Integrated Service Digital Network, or SIP, Session Initiated Protocol based networks. These are modern. So when I think of a school bus, I think of way back in, way long time ago. They're not up to date new technologies like the sports car would have. Efficiency and flexibility. School bus, simpler design, can be less efficient and flexible compared to the NCAS. The integration of signaling and call traffic in the same path may be limited to the ability to implement advanced features. So you think about that school bus, right? We're not going to add a sunroof later. We're not going to add seat belts, right? It's going to be a challenge to do that. So just like an older school bus, we're not changing the school bus much. A school bus is a school bus is a school bus. The school bus looks the same as it did a long time ago, right? So it's not very efficient, big gas guzzler, and less flexibility. So if it asks the question, which one is more efficient and flexible? Is the school bus more efficient and flexible, or is the sports car? Generally more efficient and flexible compared to the CAS. Separating signaling from call traffic allows for greater flexibility in implementing additional features and services. All the bells and whistles. With the new sports car, we're not buying a fancy new sports car without all the bells and whistles. I don't know about you, I'm not. And then network capability. Associated with older analog telephony systems and may not be compatible with newer digital technologies without additional adaptations or conversions. Okay, again, the older technology, older terminology, right? So if we go back to which one is which, anything associated, so the call path, it's taking the same path. The school bus takes the same path. Now associate every one of these things with the school bus. Does that make sense? Call path is the same. Non-call path is we're going to go off to the side. We're going to associate all of that with the little red sports car, not taking the same path. And then everything else can fall in place underneath it. And then so the network capability for that is typically used in modern digital networks and is compatible with newer technologies and newer protocols. Does that make sense? Or am I totally off base? I would love to hear from you in the comments. Hopefully it is making sense and it's not clear as mud. The Canadian Wireless E911 Phase 1 stuff, they will be going over that in the Canadian section. So there are, thank you, Karen, there are some things that might be a little bit different, but that will be covered in the Canadian section. And let's move on to wireless phase 2. Wireless phase 2 is the deliver a wireless 911 call with phase 1 requirements plus location and selective routing capabilities that is based on the coordinates of that location. The most common methods of delivering phase 2 wireless 911 call is based on the JSTD number 36 standard. It's J standard of wireline capability mode protocol. Wireline compatibility mode was originally known as non-call path associated signaling. So without looking back at the phrase before, as soon as I say non-call path associating signaling, which vehicle are you thinking about? Non-call path. Anyone? The little red sports car. Yes. Perfect. Perfect, perfect, perfect. I know, it's weird. This is how my brain works. I hope that it helps you guys. And then in wireless phase 2, there was an upgrade that was made to the ALI databases to provide more available data as we moved forward. Okay. So what is wireline capability mode? WCM. It was formerly non-call path associated signaling. Now, it doesn't mean that the NCAS is only associated with wireless phase 1. It just means that it was present there, as was CAS, as was the ability to deliver 7 and 8 digits, as well as 20 digits. It was not wireless phase 2 that created the ability to accept the 20 digits, those 20 digits being the P-ANI and the phone number. The P-ANI and the phone number. Okay. So wireline compatibility mode usually means ensuring a system or device can operate according to wired communication standards. This is kind of the Band-Aid. This is the Band-Aid that I was talking about. The positive piece to this is that by doing this, it wasn't going to need big upgrades. We didn't need upgrades to the selective router. We didn't need upgrades to the PSAP or the CPE, the customer premise equipment, and that could be expensive. The negative is that the P-ANI delivered with the call requires the PSAP to query for a callback number and cell site information. So this wireline compatibility mode, again, is needing that P-ANI, needing the fake phone number for the 911 call to get to the center, to the PSAP, to be sent out. And I've said this before, and I'll say it 1,000 more times probably, is that as soon as that phone number hits your PSAP, that P-ANI phone number and the phone number are now sent out. Additional data is brought back with the location, and now it makes it that phase 2 capability. The mobile switching center is the wireless equivalent of a central office. It provides switching functions for wireless 911 calls. There's also something called the Mobile Positioning Center, MPC. It is also referred to as a Gateway Mobile Location Center, GMLC. Why do they have the same different names for the same things? I don't know, but they do. But a mobile positioning center is a functional entity that interfaces the wireless originating network and the emergency services network. So it's a gateway. We've talked about gateways briefly. We're going to talk about them more, but a gateway is something that gets put in place that will allow something older to talk to something newer. So they meet in the middle. It does what it needs to do, changes it up, does whatever, and then it allows it to get onto that emergency service network. The MPC GMLC retrieves, forwards, stores, and controls position data within the local service network. The MPC GMLC restricts access to provide position information only while that emergency call is active. Okay. So here is what a wireless phase 2 call flow with wireline capability mode looks like. Number 1, 911 call gets placed, call goes to a tower. The tower determines which mobile switching center it's going to hit. At the mobile switching center, the MSC identifies the cell sector and the callback number. That information is then sent to the mobile positioning center, and then it's sent back with the PANI. So the GMLC, not PC, I need to change that, determines the PANI and sends it back to the mobile switching center. Okay. So the mobile switching center identifies the cell sector and the callback number, sends it to the mobile positioning center, which is more what we're really after. That GMLC one, we don't really talk about that, but it is also called that. So we'll stick to the MPZ mobile positioning center. So it's basically getting the position, and it's going to determine that PANI, and it's going to send it back to the mobile switching center. It is then going to send the mobile switching center, sends the PANI and the voice to the selective router or the E911 tandem, whatever you want to call it. The selective router E911 tandem can be termed interchangeably, but simultaneously it's sending the information to the ALI database. Okay. Once the selective router determines which 911 center it's going to go to, the voice in the PANI is sent to the correct PSAP at the direction of the selective router database. You're going to need to know these. SRDB, selective router database. That call, the voice and the phone number, and the PANI are going to get to the PSAP, and then that information, the phone number information, is going to get parsed out, sent to the ALI database, and then it's going to come back to, that PANI is going to go to the database, and then back with it is going to come the location information that is associated with that particular phone call. Does that make sense? And then the Canadian phase 2 stuff we'll talk about at the Canadian times. There are different location determinations that there are 3 specific these days for wireless. The information provided from the device usually utilizes information from several mobile switching centers to determine the location. These are the 3 ways that location can be determined. Number 1, using the handset. This handset can use just basic GPS or AGPS. We'll talk about, I think next week we're going to do that. Using network triangulation. Okay. And some folks don't realize is that that's kind of an either or situation. It's either using GPS or it's using triangulation. It's not going to be using both. And then we have this new fancy stuff, device-based hybrid location, DBH, which uses the operating system and their location sensors. And this is when I first started with RapidSOS, when device-based hybrid location started to become a thing. Okay. And that's kind of what I refer to as phase 3, right? Is device-based hybrid location coming from the operating system on the device. That is why I am such a proponent for using the RapidSOS portal. We've had several agencies or several areas where their 911 calling was compromised. However, it was compromised. but people couldn't call 911. They couldn't get through to 911 because there was a problem with the network. If they are calling 911 and that agency has access to the Rapid SOS portal, it is not the network that is receiving the location and all of the information from the device. It is the operating system through device-based hybrid location. The sensors in which it's getting that location is satellite, Wi-Fi sensors, Bluetooth beacons, accelerometers, pedestrian dead reckoning sensors such as gyro monitors or whatever, step counters, gyroscopes. That's what I was looking for. Thank you, Jason. I'm like gyro something, gyro sensors. Okay. So all of these device-based location sensors are taking that location and sending it to the over-the-top solution that is, which we discussed last week, is what is considered an additional data repository, a location information server, the Rapid SOS portal. So without the network being able to send the 911 call through, the device still can send that location through a data network to the Rapid SOS portal. So when folks will say, oh, we have it integrated into our phone system, we don't need the portal. Well, the lie detector determined that's a lie, because if your 911 phone system's down, the call's not even coming in. So you're getting nothing. At least with the portal, you have a notification that somebody at this location has placed a 911 call. And here's the phone number. So call them back. Your system's down. So the device-based hybrid location sensors are what you see in front of you there. As far as device-based location goes, Apple has their version, Android has theirs. This is proprietary information. They are a little bit different. They're the similar but different. Apple calls theirs HELO, hybridized emergency location. This is what became available in iOS 12 back in 2018. So when Rapid SOS partnered with Apple, it was HELO that made it possible for that location to leave the Apple device operating system and get sent to a third party, being Rapid SOS as the first one. Okay. The Android version of that technology is ELS, Emergency Location Services. So if you want any more information on those, you can kind of just Google those. But this was back in a headline. Apple today said iPhones will soon provide 911 services with more exact location of the callers. Since 2015, now this is 2018 that Rapid SOS and Google and Apple partnered first in the summer. But since 2015, Apple had been giving the locations to the service providers, but the systems weren't allowing, they didn't have the mechanisms to allow those locations through. And even if they did allow them through, which they are doing these days, we still don't know on the Alley side what type of location it is. We don't know if it's a handset with the GPS. We don't know if it's a triangulation, and we don't know if it's a device-based location. I think we should know that information. I think that needs to change. So we can kind of know how accurate that information is. And then shortly after that, towards the end of the year, Android also partnered with Rapid SOS. They took their ELS in the US and made it available. It was already deployed in the UK and other areas, but when they came to the US, it became available. It was very similar to HELO, but these are the two different names. They are in your manual, so know the difference. Apple is HELO and Android is ELS. And the bottom line, device-based location coming from the operating system on the device is definitely a higher level of accuracy. Okay. Higher level of accuracy. And then there are wireless interconnection standards. These are the different ways that we can connect or have connectivity through our wireless devices. Bluetooth, short range, communication between devices like smartphones, headphones, smartwatches, my wireless mouse here, my my wireless keyboard. So Bluetooth is short range. Wi-Fi enables wireless location area networking. It allows for you to connect to the internet. NFC near field communication. So this facilitates communication between devices when they are brought close together, typically within a few centimeters. This is centimeters. Oh my God, my Boston just came out. Everybody lost their minds about a year ago. Do you remember? It was all over social media. They're like, oh, Apple did a update. You need to shut off the thing, and now you can stand next to somebody and steal all their data. No, no, you couldn't. You could do that before. You just had to turn it on. You had to turn it on, and you had to say, I want to give this to this person, and you could do that. But what it's called is near field communication. And then Zigbee and Z Waves is standard for low power, short range wireless communication between smart home devices. Home automation systems uses them to control the lights and thermostats and other smart home devices. And then your cellular standards, 4G, LTE, 5G, etc. It's just our cellular networks getting faster and more efficient. Specifically, LTE stands for long-term evolution. Okay. Nick, nobody adheres to Z-Wave standards. It drives me nuts. I don't even think I would know what the standards are for that. I wouldn't even know that there were standards that I would have to adhere to. Is that like a standard that I can't turn on my neighbor's lights? Home IoT problems. Yeah, exactly. Okay. All right. That makes sense. And he sent that message to me. But again, and it's that ignorance, right? I think a lot of us are making, because there's a lot of technology challenges and changes happening, and a lot of the mistakes that are made are errors of ignorance, not intention. Like, think about Wi-Fi dialing. Wi-Fi dialing, people think it's great. If I'm on AT&T and I don't have really good AT&T service where I am, then I can connect to Wi-Fi dialing. But a lot of people don't realize that with Wi-Fi dialing, you have to enter an address and it has to match, etc. And it runs into all kinds of problems. We talked about that during multi-line telephone system stuff. So LTE stands for long-term evolution. It's a type of technology used for high-speed wireless communication, commonly known as 4G LTE. In simple terms, LTE is super fast way for your phone or other devices to connect to the internet wirelessly. It lets you stream videos, download files, use apps faster than our older network technologies. And LTE helps deliver a better mobile internet experience by allowing for the quicker downloads, smoother streaming, et cetera, et cetera. And it's just getting faster and faster. I don't know how much faster we need to be or have to be. I mean, it's wicked fast anyway. And then the identification and definition of a non-service initialized device, an NSI phone. I think one of the things that blew my mind when I was working at Rapid SOS, being one of the first to realize that, oh, wait a minute, not all 911 area code calls are disconnected cell phones. That was pretty epic. That was pretty cool to realize that. But we're going to talk specifically about the NSI phones by definition, and then I'm going to give you an additional piece of information that is wicked important. So, the NSI phones, understanding that not all 911 area code calls are NSI phones. They're not all disconnected cell phones. In this case, you can see a 911 area code here that's coming in on a wireless. That's a phase 1. Chances are that is a true disconnected non-service initialized device. But on the second one, you see here a 911 with a wireless phase 2. There's a chance this may actually be a service initialized device that has come through the system as a 911 area code. So what I call this is a term that Tracy coined. It's an NSI imposter. It's pretending to be a disconnected cell phone. So an NSI phone, by definition, is a disconnected no service. Okay. A non service initialized device is a mobile device for which there is no valid service contract with any service provider. Disconnected. Um, this 911, I'm gonna tell you this here. This is listed in the documentation. I don't know it to be 100% true these days. Maybe initially it was to be that way, but it's not. It's definitely not. Um, but when you look at the 911 area code phone number, in theory, at some point it was supposed to be the 911, and then the next was the ESN number, that emergency service zone number, which that is not the case. I have several copies of 911 area code calls, and it's not the ESN. And then there is the last four digits is a portion of the IMEI number, that one of the numbers that's associated with the cell phone. Almost virtually impossible to figure out what device this call is coming from. It can happen. It's a lot of steps. It's a lot of works. I don't have a protocol or a process to do that. Some folks may, but you're not getting it at the time of the call for sure. There's a lot of research and subpoenaing and all that stuff. But then on the other side, this is the additional piece of information that I want to share with you, is that of the NSI imposter. In the matters of 911 call forwarding requirements for non-service initialized phones, the public safety docket number 08-51. I stumbled upon it, and I have made it a mission to share this with anyone and everyone who will listen. Specifically, if you were to go to that, I have the link here. So when you get the PDF, you'll be able to just click on it. If you specifically go to section C, that is titled Protecting Calls from 911, protecting calls to 911 from service initialized device that may appear to be an NSI device. The record indicates, however, that in certain circumstances, a service initialized device may appear to be an NSI device to a CMRS provider's network. This is when it happens. These are the things that are listed in that docket as to why a call may be appearing on your 911 screen as a disconnected cell phone with a 911 area code, but it's actually a perfectly good working cell phone. I'm not going to go through all of these because that is not part of this exam. They are there if you should want to go through them. But I will tell you that the most prominent reason that I have seen is the call is riding in on somebody else's network. So if I have an AT&T phone and I am in West Virginia, where US Cellular is the master network, and my AT&T phone, I dial 911, US Cellular has to transmit that call to 911, but it has no idea who I am. It just sends the call and nothing else. And I didn't think we realized the magnitude of how many times this happens. It's not all the time, but it does happen. And again, this is why you want the Rapid SOS portal. The Rapid SOS portal is taking the information from the device. It'll take the phone number, it'll take the location, and it will pop up on your screen the actual location and the phone number associated with the phone number that is displaying on your screen with a 911 area code. So don't always assume that if you see a 911 area code, it is a disconnected cell phone. It might be an NSI imposter. And then here is that document I was talking about. You can click on that and it'll bring you there. So what does that mean? Not all 911 area code calls, or not all 911 area code anti-alley calls, are from disconnected cell phones. Always ask for the phone number that they are calling from. My folks, that's how they ask the question. There are some folks that will, whether it's in policy or that's how they learned, or however, they say, what is the best number to reach you at? My folks didn't say that. I wouldn't say that, because if you have someone like my mom-in-law who doesn't really carry her cell phone around, who barely has it charged, maybe she thinks to turn it on, but if she turns it on, that is not going to be the best number to reach her at. So my soapbox, ask what number they're calling from. If they tell you a phone number, then chances are it's going to match the one that's on the portal, and it's a fully good working cell phone. there's a lot of assumptions made when they see the 911 area code. Oh, it's a disconnected cell phone, can't do anything with it. But did the lie detector determine that was a lie? And I wrote this article when I was with Rapid SOS. If you wanted to check it out, it talks about some of the stuff that I just discussed. But that link right there, or if you just Googled Rapid SOS, how to handle and locate a non service initialized call, you can get to that article. It no longer has my name on it, but that's okay. But the link will be there as well. And it's just a little bit of added information that's important while we're talking about wireless. So, with that, that is all I have for you on the wireless section. Hopefully, it made sense. If you have any questions, there's my contact information. You can use the quick contact form QR code there. Would love for you to like and follow me on social media. And in the bottom right hand corner is a private Facebook group for first responders, mental health and wellness. We are currently in May. May is Mental Health Awareness Month. Check in on each other, reach in, say hello, tell people they matter. And until next time, heroes, stay safe, stay strong, stay here. I need you.